Thank you, President Park, for your great speech at IC 2020. I hope everyone here and somewhere else online has enjoyed this opening address. If you have problem watching this, please email us and we'll try our best to fix the problem. So again, thank you, President Park of KICS. This concludes the opening address, but we have the first keynote speech. The first keynote speech of the plenary session will be given by Dr. Sung-Hyun Choi. He's the Senior Vice President and Head of Advanced Communications Research Center. So Samsung Electronics, and he's going to give us a great speech and the first keynote speech of ICTC 2020. The topic will be on challenges and prospect of next generation mobile communications. Again, let's give a big hand to Dr. Sung-Hyun Choi.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. So good morning, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here to give a keynote speech today. Actually, I think it's really special for me to be here, given that as a professor, and as Professor Park said, I was a professor until August last year. And when I was at the school, I was working for KICS a lot, and especially I was heavily involved with the organization of former versions of ICTCs, as especially my role was the organization of this keynote speech and industrial talk arrangement and so on. Now, I'm here to give a keynote. Especially, given this COVID-19 situation, it's first time for me to give an offline talk this year. So in many different ways, it's really special for me to be here. I'm really excited. Especially, I'm here to share our vision about 6G, and I hope that I can deliver some good messages to you. So I'm Sung-Hyun Choi. I'm currently heading the research center called Advanced Communication Research Center. Under our center, we are doing a lot of things, including standardization and research for 5G evolution, 6G, and IoT connectivity. And in this talk, I will talk about what we are thinking about the next generation cellular communication, so-called 6G, and challenges and prospects. So, as you know, last year, the world first 5G commercialization happened April last year. And since then, a lot of countries and operators are kind of announcing the start of 5G services. And currently, in 47 countries, over 100 operators are kind of providing 5G services. So compared with 4G, we think that 5G commercialization is very fast, kind of moving, and we believe that there will be more operators and countries where I think provide 5G service. Well, now here, I would like to talk about 6G. As you know, basically, this global standardization of cellular communication, I think, started from 3G. Actually, 3GPP is a standard body which contributed to this technology development a lot beginning 3G. And since then, 3G, 4G, and up to 5G have been developed. As you might know, actually, in cellular wireless mobile communication, one generation basically takes like 10 years. So if you think about the fact that 5G started last year, or exactly speaking, ITUR will kind of approve 5G technology late this year. So given that it's kind of, year 2020 is the first year of 5G, truly speaking, I think we now have to think about 6G, which will be commercialized in late 2020s and possibly in year 2030 and forwards, 6G will be the kind of the mainstream of mobile communication technology. So given that 6G will be commercialized and will be part of our lives in year 2030, I think we have to think about what would be the mega trends in that era. So the first thing is, we see a lot of machines and in our daily lives, and more different types of form factors of machines are appearing today. In year 2030, we believe that there will be 500 billion machines will be connected to the internet. That number should represent about 60 times of world population of human being. So in that context, in 6G era, on top of human being, actually machines could be another main user of 6G. If you take a look at what machines can do, compared with human, actually the capability of machines can be unlimited. If you think about what we can do, we can see some, with our vision, but the resolution which we can recognize is quite limited. If we think about our hearing capability, the audio and the frequency which we can hear is also quite limited. But apparently, depending on the capabilities of robots and machines, apparently, this machine's capability will be unlimited. So that means, 6G should be able to satisfy the needs of such machines. So that can be something which cannot be achieved using 5G today. Can you move? Yeah, okay. So next one is AI and ML. As you know, AI and machine learning technology is being utilized for many different applications. And I think the impact, and the utility is kind of being proved in different ways. We know that a lot of people are trying to utilize AI ML for other applications, including wireless communications. And we believe that over the 10 years down the road, I think AI ML for communication will be more tried. And in 6G, AI ML should be basically natively part of 6G technology. So AI ML can be utilized to reduce the cost of communication technology in terms of CapEx and OpEx. And also it can be utilized to enhance the performance and optimize the performance and so on. The next thing is openness. So today, a lot of network equipments are being softwareized. So in old days, when we think of network equipment, they were special purpose hardwares. Now, thanks to the development of CPUs and GPUs, a lot of network functions are being softwareized. Especially, this software implementation is utilizing open source a lot. So you might have heard open source communities like ORAN, ONEP, and so on. On top of that, in old days, network equipments were kind of connected in a proprietary manner. But now people are trying to connect, different network entities by using open interfaces. So that is kind of one of the purposes of this Open LAN alliance activity. Again, this kind of openness we'll see more openness within the network functions and entities and implementation a lot. And I think it's kind of good opportunities, but at the same time, it could impose some challenges too. So we know that wireless communication and communication overall kind of contributed to the development of society a lot. Especially, I think there have been a lot of educational gaps between within the society. and we are talking about this energy issue and so on. But we believe that communication overall will contribute to kind of handle this kind of problems a lot in the future. So what could be the potential services which can be realized using 6G? I would like to talk about three things. I think in some sense, it's kind of too early to talk about this kind of services, but at the same time, when we develop some new technology, I think talking about some possible services which will become available or achievable using this kind of future technology is always useful, right? So the first thing is truly immersive XR. Today, we see some of these MR, AR devices, but due to many different reasons, I think these are not very popular as of today. I think the reasons could include the weight, cost, but basically the utility which can be achieved using today's AR, MR devices. But actually, as you might know, a lot of people and a lot of companies are working on the development of new future XR devices. So in the near future, we'll see a lot of XR devices which are lighter and less costly, and also at the same time which are a lot more capable in terms of computing. I'll talk about computing a bit more later. The thing is, depending on the resolution of these XR devices, if the resolution is really high, I think the communication capacity or bandwidth required to support the services of these XR devices should be a lot higher than which can be provided by 5G today. So we can think of this truly immersive XR service can be utilized can be supported only by future next generation wireless communication. The next one is mobile hologram. So we have seen this hologram technology in different movies. And again, hologram is not basically widely available, but a lot of people are working on it. And you might have heard the terms like volumetric video, volumetric display, and so on. I think through this kind of development, eventually, I think we'll see the realized hologram later. Again, depending on the resolution of hologram, the data amount which is needed to support this kind of hologram will be a lot higher, which can be achieved using 5G. The last one is digital replica. I think it has been kind of told in the community under the name of digital twins. Basically, the physical world can be replicated into the virtual world. And within the virtual world, basically, entities can be simulated. And basically, this physical entity and virtual entities. Oops. Yeah, so physical entities and virtual entities can interact each other. Basically, for the monitoring of physical world, I think depending on the resolution of the replication, I think we need a lot of bandwidth. And also for the other way around, basically by using XR kind of devices or hologram, basically user can interact with the physical world by controlling the virtual world. Again, in there, probably robots or some of the kind of controllers might kind of work there too. So I kind of mentioned three possible services which can be realized by 6G. So if you think about all these services, I think I mentioned all these services require a lot of bandwidth and wireless capacity, which cannot be supported by 5G. And also, if you think about these services require very prompt interaction between user and the other kind of entity in the world. basically very short latency is also very desirable. So, and also at the same time, computing power is also very required too. I'll talk about computing later. So if we take a look at the slide, in terms of peak rate, we are thinking about 1 terabps transmission rate, which should be 50 times larger than what 5G can do. And in terms of user experience data rate, we are thinking about 1 gigabps, which should be 10 times larger than what 5G can do. And finally, in terms of air latency, we are talking about 0.1 millisecond, which is 1/10 of what 5G can do today. So we can think about a lot other requirements too, but as time goes, we'll continue to discuss with other companies and researchers to finalize these requirements. But the thing is, compared with 5G, well, apparently 6G requires a lot higher performance requirements, and that it would be really challenging to achieve these numbers. Not just performance requirements. I think when we prepare for 6G, we are thinking about some other requirements. The first one is architectural requirements. So earlier I mentioned that this kind of small form factor devices like AR, VR, they will require high computing to support these potential services. But if you think about these small form factors, it will be really difficult to have high computing power in this small form factor. So what we can do is, by distributing the computing power between these small form factor devices and network entities, including base station, mobile edge computing, cloud, and so on. And if this kind of distributed computing can be done so seamlessly so that user cannot notify where the computing is happening, then I think it's really desirable. So this kind of split computing technology should be developed and also should be part of this new architecture. And I mentioned AI, ML already. Basically AI should be heavily utilized to handle the real world problems which cannot be kind of handled by human being manually or by using some of these kind of rule-based approaches. So AI should be part of 6G in a native manner. And also, in 5G, we have very different types of base stations, macro cell, small cell, and so on. Actually, you might know that satellite communication will be part of this cellular or wireless communication today, later in the near future. So we believe that as part of 6G, satellite and HAPS will become part of major components and will play important roles. The next and last requirements which we are thinking of is trustworthiness. So earlier I mentioned open source based software implementation and open interfaces. As I said, they kind of provide good opportunities. But at the same time, being open means there could be more security threat. So, and another thing is AI, ML. AI, ML is heavily utilized in the future wireless communication. But today, if you think about what AI, ML does is, in many cases, it provides good solution. But we don't know why it works good in many cases. So, how AI works is not really transparent. And also, sometimes AI, ML might not work properly and might be misused, but we don't know when it happens. So in 6G, when AI, ML is natively used, I think what AI does should be transparent. So in that context, I think privacy, security, and transparency in total, I think this kind of trustworthiness should be very important requirement of 6G. So I mentioned this 6G services and some of the requirements which we are thinking of. So to satisfy these requirements, I think we started thinking about what could be potential candidate technologies. So I listed off some of them, and for the rest of my talk, I will briefly discuss these technologies one by one. The first one is terahertz. We all know that in 5G, we basically consider major two bands. One is sub 6 gigahertz, the other one is above 6 gigahertz. Especially, above 6 gigahertz, we looked at and we commercialized millimeter wave technology. In particular, 28 gigahertz, 39 gigahertz, and so on. And earlier, as part of performance requirement, I mentioned very high data rate, up to 1 terabps. Well, actually, in order to achieve such high data rate, we need wide bandwidth. And in order to enjoy and utilize wide bandwidth, apparently we have to look at very high frequency. Then it comes, this terahertz or sub-terahertz. So we are basically talking about the frequency, carrier frequency above 110 gigahertz. So, well, terahertz means 1,000 gigahertz, but actually when we refer to terahertz, we consider above 100 or 110 gigahertz, sub-terahertz. So we are looking at this technology very seriously today. Well, actually, one is where and how it can be utilized, but the more important and basic question is it really possible to implement terahertz communication in a cost-effective manner and energy-efficient manner? The fact is, in terahertz domain, we don't have discrete RF components. So if we would like to implement and realize terahertz communication, even from the prototype, we need to implement RFIC. And also, if we take a look at this high frequency, there are a lot of challenges. Basically, the higher the frequency, the more the path loss. And also, the atmospheric absorption will be larger. And if you take a look at the power amp efficiency will be really low compared with lower frequency. And also, if you take a look at the phase noise of RF components, it will be a lot larger too. So the thing is, there are a lot of challenges, and also it costs a lot of investment, and we are looking at this technology very seriously these days. But thing is, as I said, in order to achieve this high data rate, we have to see that. So that is one thing. The next one is new type of antenna technology. You might know that when we talk about millimeter wave base stations, these millimeter wave base stations use tons of antennas, in the order of hundreds of antennas for a base station. The reason why we have so many antennas today is by using many antennas, we can make very sharp beams, and also we can utilize multi-user MIMO and so on. But another thing is by utilizing many antennas, by having larger antenna gains, we can basically combat this high path loss. As I said, if we talk about terahertz, I think the challenge is even bigger, and apparently we have to talk about or think about even larger number of antennas, even more massive MIMO. But that will require a lot of efforts and cost and so on. So I think we have to think about some alternative approaches. So here comes metamaterial antennas, metamaterial surfaces, lens, and so on. So metamaterial is something like material or kind of components which can show some of the characteristics which cannot be achieved or which is not observed in nature. So in this context, basically by having this kind of meta-service lens, basically the direction of the signal can be controlled as we wish. So which can be achieved using massive MIMO antenna. So I'm talking about beamforming. So beamforming can be achieved using this kind of metamaterial lens, and also what it means is compared with massive MIMO or traditional massive MIMO, hopefully this kind of metamaterial lens can achieve directivity of high frequency signal in more cost-effective manner. And also, if you take a look at the right-hand side, I'm talking about reconfigurable intelligent surface. So if you think about the physics, basically, we know, whenever there is an incoming signal, the reflecting signals, direction is kind of fixed depending on the surface angle and so on. But in here, by again utilizing this kind of metamaterial technology, the reflecting signal direction can be controlled electronically. So again, in terahertz, we have to look at more massive MIMO technology for sure, but in order to achieve what we want in a more cost-effective manner or more intelligent manner, I think we have to look at new antenna technologies by utilizing this kind of metamaterial approaches. The next one is duplex schemes. We all know that traditionally we have been using frequency division duplexing, and now as part of 5G, especially in Korea, we are utilizing TDD. So basically both FDD and TDD allocate kind of resources for uplink and downlink in a kind of orthogonal manner. But what happens if we can utilize specific wireless resource for uplink and downlink simultaneously? So I'm talking about in-band full duplex technology. So full duplex technology have been there, and a lot of people have been working on there a lot, but I think it has not been widely commercialized. And we believe that in order to achieve what 6G requires, we have to look at this new duplex technology more seriously. So if you take a look at the figure, there could be some full band full duplex, or partly in-band, partial in-band, full duplex could be another approach we can take a look at. So eventually what I'm talking about is in 6G, we have to look at more flexible duplex technology. And by doing so, we can achieve higher frequency, higher spectral efficiency across different network regions and so on. Earlier I mentioned satellite and HAPS already. So if I talk about a bit more about that, as part of 3GPP release 17, the industry started looking at NTN technology. NTN means non-terrestrial network. So as part of NTN, satellite and HAPS and so on are being considered. So especially when I talk about satellite, I'm not talking about using special purpose phones. So you might know there are some satellite communication services already available, like Iridium. But if you take a look at those phones, they are really large form factors and also folding antennas and so on. So we cannot carry these phones all the time. And also if you think about the usage of satellite communication, well actually, if you are living in Korea, you don't really feel the needs for satellite communication. But if you go to other world, especially even the US, as far as we understand, the 30% of the geographical coverage of the US is not covered by cellular technology today. So if you go to some national parks in the US, you often kind of lose the connectivity of cellular. And then if something happens, you don't know what to do because you don't have cellular coverage there. So what could happen is if this 5G evolution achieves NTN technology, by utilizing satellite communication, even using your smartphone, in certain cases, you will be able to be connected to the world through satellite directly. So it might not be used in daily lives, but in certain emergency situation, and depending on where you are, you have basically very high needs for satellite, and that will be available, that will be achievable in quite a few years. And what happens in 6G? We believe that in 6G, not just for emergency situation, but basically 6G will include satellite and this kind of flexible network topology as part of 6G. So the vision is, across the South Pole to North Pole, we should be able to enjoy 6G service in 6G era. So that's the goal. And another thing is, as I said, the higher the frequency, the higher the path loss. So apparently, the link distance will be shorter. So that means we might need more base stations and we might need relays and so on. So this kind of things, technologies being developed as part of 5G already too. So there is a kind of name called IAB, integrated access and backhaul technology. So that will become available and will be utilized for millimeter wave in the near future. And this kind of relay or integrated access and backhaul technology will be even more heavily utilized as part of 6G, we believe. Yeah, so I talked about AI ML already too. So today, AI ML is utilized in different applications, including communication, and many operators and vendors are looking at utilizing AI ML technology for optimization of the performance of network and so on. And as part of 6G, not just single kind of problem, but overall problems should be handled by AI ML in a holistic manner. Yeah, this is spectrum sharing. So you might know that today, when new technologies develop, government put an auction for spectrum for the operators. So network operators bid for the auction and then get the license of usage of spectrum. And then once the license is taken, the operators can utilize specific band in a kind of exclusive manner. But you know that in many cases, depending on regions and times, the spectrum will not be fully utilized. And if operators in a single region can share the spectrum depending on their customers' needs in a very short-term manner, then I think this precious frequency spectrum can be better utilized and so on. So spectrum sharing is something we have to look at more carefully. And in there, also possibly AI ML can play a key role. Because if you think about spectrum sharing, if there is a single entity which can control everything and which can control multiple operators in a centralized manner, then it's not a big problem. But apparently operators, even if they are willing to share their spectrum, they will want to share unlimited amount of information for spectrum sharing. In such a case, how to achieve good, kind of efficient spectrum sharing while exchanging limited amount of information, that is challenging, and possibly AI ML can play a role in there too. So earlier I mentioned split computing already. So think about it, we want to enjoy AI ML or XR service irrespective of the form factor and the capability. Even today, if you think about smartphone, well, high-end smartphones capability can be very different from low-end smartphones. So can we make all these smartphones can provide good quality of service irrespective of their on-device capability? So offloading some computing job to the network or server is the way, right? So especially if you think about AI ML, we have deep neural network with multiple layers. So if we can do some of the layers own device, and the rest of the jobs for the other layers can be kind of offload those jobs in the network entity like MEC and so on. Then what can we do is, irrespective of the computing power of the local device, basically high performance service can be provided. So this kind of split computing or split machine learning or AI is something we have to look at. So I briefly talked about these candidate technologies. And now, as I said, we are talking about 6G, which will be heavily utilized in years 2030s. But if you take a look at this, based on what happened for 3G, 4G, and 5G, we believe that 6G can be commercialized as early as in year 2028. And then it will be widely deployed in year 2030 and forward. So today I talked about our vision, mega trend, requirements, candidate technology, and so on. Actually, 3 months back, we published a white paper including all these kind of contents, and this white paper is available publicly. So feel free to download it and read it and give us comments, and let's do things together to make 5G. Oh yeah, by the way, the catchphrase for 6G of Samsung is the next hyper-connected experience for all. So when we say all, human beings, machines, and to every corner of our lives. So hopefully that will happen in 10 years down the road. So let me conclude my talk. Basically, what I said is 5G is happening now. Some people might say that, well, isn't it too early to talk about 6G? But it's the very right time to talk about 6G, and we have to think about it, and we have to work together to make it happen in 10 years down the road. So please join us to make it all true, all together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sung-Hyun Choi, for the great speech at ICTC 2020. I think we have time maybe for 1 or 2 questions. Yes.
Yeah, so if you have any questions,
do you have
feel
question?
free.
Could you say your organization name?
Yes, hello. Thank you, Dr. Choi, for your presentation. And my name is Umar. I'm a PhD student here in Korea from Gwangju. So you talked about 6G, next generation communication protocol. And so your team is working, and other companies are working, right? And you talked about high energy antennas, and yes, the link distance would be shorter, so we need more base stations, right? So that means high power communication, more base stations, and the metrics you talked about were we need more energy efficiency and the cost that's important. So, but my question or concern is from the perspective of like hazardous effects on environment, life, or particularly human health or patients with cancer or something. So, could you please tell us something about that?
Dr. Choi, could you also repeat the question for the YouTube attendees? Thank you.
So I think the main question is the health issue with high frequency and energy, high energy and so on. Okay. So it's a good question. The health is the most important thing, right? As you might know, when we release new phone or any wireless device, we do test a lot. And this test is not just by the company itself, but it's conducted through the government agencies. And especially these days, the test environment or condition became even stricter. So what I'm trying to say is, for example, before, what was conducted is, what happens if the smartphone emits the highest power with this distance. Now, the distance becomes even shorter because people are concerned about the health a lot. So the government is kind of changing the rule to make it even tighter. So what I'm trying to say is, well, it's a valid question, but industry is looking at it and government organizations are looking at it. So don't worry about it. And another thing is, okay, hold on. So another thing is, I just mentioned smartphone, but recently governments started looking at the power emitted by base stations too. So the point is, it's very important, but basically industry and governments are looking at it. So, well, but health issue is always an important issue.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's the opposite of the goals that 6G is trying to achieve. Of course, health is goal. Anyway, because I just asked this question because some people were already concerned about 5G, and others said that these are conspiracy theories. So anyway, there was some concern. But with 6G and terrorist communication, I think then in that case the concern would be more genuine.
yeah,
Okay,
I agree.
thank you. I think we're running out of time, so I think the conclusion is don't worry. The company, the government is
Yeah, we'll take care of it.
really
Health
looking
is the
into
most
it.
important thing. So
Yes.
we'll definitely take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. So again, let's give a big, big clap to Dr. Chen.
Okay, thank you.
So this concludes the keynote speech and the opening ceremony. So I'd like to close the session. Thank you all for the attendees online, offline. But don't go, we have a photograph session. So